Hello, I'm Rosalie Michaels, and welcome back to part 2 of our holiday special edition of the Pain Channel. With me again is Dr. Steven Sywick, Medical Director of the Pain Center of Arizona.
Thanks for having me back, Rosalie. I can't wait to see what today's show has in order.
Well, last week we covered 5 special moments from the Pain Channel's first year, and this week we're going to one-up that by showing the 5 most memorable moments from 2010.
I know when I watch countdowns, I almost never agree with the order of the list. So hopefully we'll be able to do some justice today with our rankings.
Now, if you disagree with the order of our rankings, feel free to email us your thoughts by clicking Ask Dr. Sywick section at the bottom of our website. We gladly accept both fan and hate mail. Right, Doctor?
That is right. I'm excited to start off today's show with the segment we did on a robotics company called Spring Active. Now, they had some unbelievable technology and even gave us access to their lab. But what really struck a nerve with me was the story behind the technology.
And here's the number 5 Pain Channel moment of the year.
Hello, my name is Kevin Hollander. I am the Director of Product Development at Spring Active Incorporated here in Tempe, Arizona. All this started for me personally about a decade ago after my uncle was injured in a work-related accident. He's now a bilateral above-the-knee amputee. And a couple of years after his accident, we were at a family barbecue together. And he came up to me in a joking manner and he said, "Kevin, you're an engineer. Why don't you build me a pair of legs that work?" And I laughed and he laughed and we had a good time. Well, later that evening, as we were driving home, I started thinking about the problem and I said to myself, why don't robotic limbs for amputees exist? What's going on there? There's been so many more advances in the world in computers and software and technology in general, but you don't see it in that environment. So for me, that's where this all started. And then with that, when I came back and moved to Arizona to pursue my PhD, that's where I began my research, was looking at the problem of how do you apply technology and robotics to assist people that need it.
Wow! His uncle asked him for bionic legs and he delivered? Kind of makes you feel like an underachiever, doesn't it?
How could it not?
Yeah.
I'd highly recommend going back to episode 10 in our video section and watching that full segment. One of his product development engineers talks about how the future is heading towards an actual bionic man. And after seeing that laboratory, it's hard to argue with him.
We now move from the $6 million men to the $6 billion question. How do you get rid of migraines while simultaneously staying young and vibrant? A relatively new procedure was making headlines across the nation, so the Pain Channel asked people on the street if they'd heard about it.
Did you know that you can do a procedure of Botox to relieve your migraine pain?
No.
What do you think about that?
That's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. I have never heard of that before.
Not at all.
No, I never heard that.
No, I've never heard that.
No, but Botox?
Botox. What do you think about that?
I think it would be fantastic, especially when you're my age.
I didn't know they were using Botox to relieve headaches.
No.
I'm
interested.
Tell us more.
Sign me up.
Would you ever do it?
Absolutely.
You think it's a great idea?
It's a great idea.
Botox for headaches? Well, it works for other things, so it works for like face, and underarm perspiration, and it may work for headaches. Yeah, I'd be willing to try that if I had like a really bad headache.
Of course, what made this moment particularly memorable was that the Pain Center of Arizona was already offering this revolutionary procedure, and so we were able to take our viewers through the actual process. Well, the war on migraines just changed when the FDA approved Botox for the medical treatment of migraines. Most of you are aware that Botox previously had been used mostly in the cosmetic world, taking away wrinkles. Well, today there certainly is a new approved indication, and that's for the treatment of migraines. I could tell you that prior to Botox, the treatment for migraines really was a medication type of approach. It had to do with two types of medicines. We would talk to the patients or start them on the preventative medicines, typically what we would say is a low-dose tricyclic medicine or a beta blocker that would help to prevent the migraines from happening. And then on occasion when the migraines would occur, we'd use an abortive medicine in the triptan family. So let me tell you a little bit about the Botox. Well, this is a procedure that, as you can see, is performed at the Pain Center of Arizona, and what you're watching here is Rick Allen, one of our physician assistants, performing the procedure for this patient. It is a series of small, little, almost painless type injections that will be injected to the patient's forehead, to their temples, around to the back of the head, and then evidently to the neck and shoulders. It is a very, very simple procedure. It is tolerated very well by the patients, and the patients are watched in the recovery area for several minutes to a half an hour before they go home in excellent condition.
Okay, no headaches and no wrinkles. All right, that one is going to be hard to top.
You would think so. And yet I've got something for you from episode number 8. Serena Default. This is a woman now diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and you know the path to diagnosis can be a long and treacherous journey. But Serena, we found out, is an overachiever, and she wanted to embark on a journey of her own.
My name's Serena, and I'm from Tucson, Arizona. And in 1997, I was walking across the street to get some change for the laundry machine, and a woman hit me with her small pickup truck. And from what I've been told, I flew 4 feet up into the air, landed on my head, and no bones were broken, but it was a pretty intense accident. It was almost indescribable. It fluctuated from different parts of my body, but there would be times where it felt like a fiery knife being stabbed into my back for days and days on end. I was fatigued. I was extremely sensitive to anything. Even just a friendly jab or a poke would be like someone sticking me with something sharp. I was hypersensitive, I had a really hard time sleeping, and all of that was snowballing. And although I had quite a few doctors and I'd been going to physical therapy after my accident and chiropractors, no one could really figure out what was going on. I had been doing quite a few things and I still wasn't getting better. In fact, it was getting worse. I was referred to a physiatrist who diagnosed me with a condition called fibromyalgia. And this was 1998. Fibromyalgia was not known like it is now, and I had never heard the word before. I had no idea what it was, so I went and I tried to find out some information, and the only information I could find was dire stories of people in horrible pain for the rest of their lives. And I was only 23 at the time, and I didn't know if I was going to end up in a wheelchair. I didn't know if I was going to be able to work. I had just gone through all of this school and didn't know if I was ever going to be able to work as an archaeologist. One day I decided that if I was going to be in pain, I was going to at least go do something and be in pain. And so I decided to take my dog Zeus for a walk. And it was just a short walk, a walk around the block, but even that threw me into quite a pain flare afterwards. I felt the effects for several days after, but even though I felt the effects for several days after, I really enjoyed the walk with my dog. My dog enjoyed it so much, and so I continued doing these short walks with my dog. And eventually, I realized that by walking, it kind of got my mind off of the pain for a while, and I enjoyed the fresh air and the scenery. And so my husband and I would take our dogs and we'd go for very short walks. And time again, it would throw me into a pain flare, but I realized that they were becoming less and less frequent as I was doing the hikes and very, very gradually building up. So I would go from hiking, around the block to hiking around 2 blocks to maybe doing a little thing on a trail. And so by very, very slowly building these hikes up, I was able to make myself stronger. So after 9 months of planning, I took my first steps on the Arizona Trail in February in 2008. February 2008 was the beginning of the trail all the way at the Mexico border. I actually had to have some people hike that part with me because of issues with illegals and other dangerous situations near the border. But other than that, that was the only part of the trail besides the Grand Canyon that I backpacked with somebody. And I thought, what would it be like to hike from one end of the state to the other, all the way from Mexico to Utah? And at the time, it seemed like a gigantic undertaking, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it, but I loved the idea of the challenge. I did almost the entire 820 miles all by myself, and this only after having been backpacking twice before in my whole life. But I knew that I loved it so much, and that fact borne out because I had the most incredible time hiking across this amazing state. It was everything I could have expected and even way more. I realized that I was so much stronger than I originally thought I was. I hadn't had a fibromyalgia flare in 2 years, and so I wanted to give back to the community and really raise some awareness about fibromyalgia and give some hope to people that have it already. If I had one thing to say to people with fibromyalgia, it would be that you don't have to hike 800 miles across the state to make yourself feel better, to get that level of activity. You just find some passion that you really enjoy. Walking, dancing, anything that gets you out of the house and moving around, and I guarantee you'll forget about your pain for at least a little while, and it'll enrich your life, and you'll be able to find that passion that you probably lost somewhat after your diagnosis with fibromyalgia.
Okay, hold on. She hiked 800 miles across an entire state after being diagnosed with fibromyalgia? Kind of makes you feel bad for complaining about anything pretty much ever, right?
Well, I tell you, these are the types of stories that we come across in dealing with patients experiencing chronic pain. The human spirit is nothing short of remarkable. And as a pain management physician, when I get the opportunity to help someone improve their story, well, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that the breakthroughs in medicine and the personal breakthroughs we've seen have a common link. It's all about finding solutions through inspiration. And that's why I'm so fascinated by the medical technology and the unique procedures available to help patients manage their pain.
I think the video that really conveys that spirit is the vertebroplasty we featured in episode 5.
Join Dr. Ramon Jones at the Pain Center of Arizona as he performs a vertebroplasty for the Pain Channel's second most memorable moment of 2010.
The patient is lying comfortable without any difficulty or complication. The cement in its form right now is simply a liquid. And that's so that Dr. Jones will be able to inject that liquid cement through the cannula tube that he's inserted all the way down through the skin and into that bone that has been fractured. You can see that there's a cannula on the right side and there's a cannula on the left side. Both of these go through the skin and end up at the target site where the fracture is in this patient's lumbar vertebrae. Dr. Jones is now confirming the placement of both of those needles with this X-ray machine. Now Dr. Jones uses the X-ray machine and he's confirming the placement of that cement, being careful to watch that the cement is filling specifically right in the area of the fracture inside the bone. He's careful to watch that none of the cement leaks outside of the fracture in places where he doesn't want the cement to be. Now that Dr. Jones has confirmed with our state-of-the-art X-ray equipment the placement of that cement in the patient's fracture, he will remove both of these cannulas. The patient has completed the procedure without any difficulty or complication.
Wow, that was truly incredible. But Dr. Cywick, now we have to find some way to top that?
Well, it seems impossible, but I now know that there's no such thing as impossible. And the reason for that is simple. Impossible can't possibly exist in the same world as Michael Roman. Here is a man who lost his leg to an infectious disease, a man who battled intense pain, psychological damage, financial crisis for over a decade, and yet managed to come out of it stronger than you possibly could imagine.
And with that, we're proud to present our interview with professional race car driver, future Olympic bobsledder, and living inspiration, Michael Roman, as the Pain Channel's most memorable moment of 2010.
Susie had been coming up to see me each weekend and bringing all the kids. It's kind of my one time a week I'd get a break from the treatments and everything. And, you know, it was a good news, bad news, dude. It was that stupid infection that had ravaged us financially and emotionally. It was finally gone. But I woke up in the worst pain I'd ever been in. And I'm screaming in the recovery room. They didn't take the leg. I can still feel it. They didn't take the leg. And I mean, only now I felt like pliers on my toenails, and where they moved the calf muscle. You know, spiders, heebie-jeebies crawling on me. And how do you explain to your 3-year-old son that the part that hurts dad is gone? And I mean, dude, I just started to spiral. And their doctors did everything they could. They got me up in a leg right away. And I'm battling on so many different levels. I'm financially devastated. I'm in love with Susie. I want her to marry me. I don't know how I'm going to work. My college career doesn't apply to me anymore. And really was spiraling, and I get a call from my brother in Chicago, the same one who covered the Mayo costs, and I was under so much pressure, dude. I just remember saying, you know what, Rick? Happiest I was is when I was racing in high school. And he hung up the phone, and that should have been like my first indication, because nothing is ever that simple at my house. You have to debate your position. And 2 months later, he delivered a fully funded race team to me, sponsored the race team, and told me to get off my tushy. And my mom used to say, do something even if it was wrong. And, you know, we went out to the track, and not only was I good at it, but it was like a little light switch went off, dude. That pain went away. I was whole again. These kids I was racing didn't know I had one leg. They didn't even care. And for me, it was the only time I felt complete. Problem is, it was brutally difficult on me, physically. So we raced that first season from March to November. I developed neuromas, scars on my nerves. The pain would get out of control. November, I'd go in, I'd have a revision done. They'd re-amputate, I'd lose 3 inches. I'd rehab all winter long. March would come, I'd jump into the race car. And we did that for 4 seasons. And then the 2000, they took it at the hip. I raced the 2000 season, those neuromas reformed again, and now there's nothing left to revise. And I thought the first part of it was hard for me to handle. And I think that was the lowest point of my life. I was so frightened of that other experience that I took a year for me to do the trial. And when Dr. Coleman finally said, either you do this trial or you need to find a new doctor, I did it out of fear. I wish it was someone I had spoken to, something I saw online. It was, what am I going to do if I lose him? He is the only one keeping me alive right now. And so I tried it, and we went in, and he explained it's going to be real simple. They're going to give you an epidural. I've had hundreds of those, and instead of putting meds, they're going to feed this little wire up there, and we're going to turn on an external battery and see how it feels. And, they turned it on. It was almost instant for me. That leg that was ice cold and kind of dragging on the floor began to float and got warm. And I am literally singing in the operating room, and he came out to report to Susie. He goes, "It's working." Susie's like, "What's working?" I mean, we put no emotional investment into this at all. It wasn't going to work. And, my goal was, if this thing did work, 3 months, I wanted to be at 50% my pain. I figured if I could get down to 200 milligrams of morphine, my life would calm down and I'd have so much better on so many levels. And by 3 months, I reached that goal. And by 6 months, I'm off all medications for the first time in 15 years. And Susie calls it the Great Awakening. I was overwhelmed. I'm financially bankrupt. I have no job, and nobody knows about the system. Nobody knows about pain management services. And I called Boston Scientific in California, the company that made the stimulator, and I start railing on the marketing department about how they're not doing their job, how it costs me literally everything. Part of being a chronic pain patient and on all these medications is you isolate yourself from friends and family. And I needed someone to chat with. And we came up with an idea of Race Against Pain, like an internet site, a MySpace page where pain patients could talk about the procedures and talk about their experiences, and most importantly, feel connected to a community and get a lifeline back in. And one of the most important features was when they went onto that website, you type in your zip code, and all the pain doctors in your area come up. And as long as you see one of them, then that was really my call to action. Once I saw Dr. Coleman, he had the answer. I was afraid it took me a year. That's like one of my only regrets. So I wanted to make sure the next guy who was afraid had somebody to talk to about it, someone that they could use as a resource. And through this process, as I said, my family has always used racing and a race car. And I was able to climb back into the car, and that passion was fueled again. And for the last 5 years, we've been racing open wheel cars and formula cars. And last season, I got the chance to jump into a land speed car. And there's nothing I like better than winning a formula car race, hopping out in victory lane, and have the losing crew chief go, "No way," because he doesn't even know I have one leg.
And you can go to raceagainstpain.com to find a pain specialist in your area and to learn more about heroes like Michael Roman.
Well, Rosalie, it has been a great year, and now I can't wait to see what 2011 has in store for us.
Well, luckily, you won't have to wait long, because we'll be back next Wednesday at 3 p.m. with the first episode of the new year. Until then, I'm Rosalie Michaels for Dr. Steven Sywick, saying thanks for watching and have a happy, healthy, pain-free new year. Vertebraplasty. Got it.
Go.
For this recipe.
Yeah, more. No. Take one.
It really is fascinating. Bleh. Going back.
What happened was my dog was smoking, and no, I can't explain.
Okay.
And sorry, let me say that.
Don't worry.
I was going to say, we'll see you next time.